Hi guys, welcome. This is Opposing Views and my name is Emefa Akosia Adeti here on the Opposing Views. When the news breaks, whether policies that have been made, whether there's anything that you do not understand, or whether there's something happening in the country and you really want an opportunity to express your view, you do not want those who shape the narrative, those who do the policy, to come and sit on TV and explain to you. You want your voice to be heard. It is for the young people, for them to be able to express themselves. So welcome to the show where we have very opposing views but very sanitized conversation. You may find somebody who's on the other side. You might find two people on the same side, but it is all for us to get a very sanitized conversation. Good debate, but very, very healthy conversations right here. Today is the 5th day of September, and thank you for making time with us. A lot has been happening in the news, but we're going to always, as we do, narrow it down to at least 3, maybe 2, or even when one of them really takes the center stage, we'll stick to that one. I've got 2 of my friends joining me. Let me introduce them. I've got Julius Kwame Anthony. He's a social activist and also a law student. Quite an lost man here. Quite an lost man. We're happy to have you back in the studio.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right. And one man that I personally admire as well, Courage Nobi, who is a member of the NPP's National Communications team, also joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
You were so great on the spaces last Saturday.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's always great to have you host, to be able to bring it out of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so guys, over the weekend, you know that the NDC lawyers had a conference, and as part of their ritual or their convention or their tradition, we had the ex-president, definitely the leader of the party, speaking to them. And some of the things really came tops because he really spoke about the judiciary. And this won't be the first time that he's been talking about the judiciary and also prepping the NDC lawyers to get ready to take the bench, what he describes as a fair balance on the bench in the judiciary. Somewhere last year as well, he said the same thing. He came under a lot of criticisms. This year as well, the Ghana Bar Association is not really happy. They are not so enthused, they're not so happy about the comments. Many stakeholders have said that he is a man of good repute and everything he says really would go far. So he should be quite careful what he says. What has he been saying? Let's take a look at what he said this year. We will just oppose it with what he said last year. And then we'll come back. Let's see which one of my friends here is on which side. What did he say that was not very hurtful? Let's see who will come out less injured. Let's watch.
There must be judicial reform. Indeed, most Ghanaians, if you interview most Ghanaians, they believe that there must be some reform of the judiciary in order to bolster its reputation and make it an independent institution that not only Ghanaians, but foreign investors and any person who is in the jurisdiction of Ghana can trust. And so, as part of the discussions you have, we must look at how we, as the executive, and also the members of the judiciary can work together to improve the image of the Ghanaian judiciary. I believe that if the image of the judiciary is improved, it inures to the benefit of those who work in the courts. It inures to the benefit of the judges and all the judicial service workers. And so this must be something that the executive cannot impose on the judiciary, but the judiciary and the executive working together, can work to improve the stature of the judiciary. We have our work cut out for us when it comes to the executive. We must make sure that we restore the trust of our people in the executive and that people are not going to come into office and money is going to be found under their bed. And at least I can guarantee and assure the nation that I'm not going to be a clearing agent president, and that if people are accused of corruption, we would allow the constitutional bodies that are mandated to deal with those issues to go ahead and do their work and carry out those investigations. And so that I can give a firm assurance about. Let me also say that often when we have come out of elections and we have won, everybody wants to go into the executive. Our lawyers, please, I beg you, some of you must be prepared to go onto the bench. And I know that some have very lucrative legal practices. They don't want to leave those practices and go on the bench. But, I mean, you can see what the the current president has done. He's appointed the biggest number of judges onto the bench. It's more than 80 towards 100 and counting. He's packed the courts, and we know that they've packed the courts because they want to avoid accountability after they have left office. And so all manner of people who are known to have been partisan, to have been executives of their party, who are in the legal profession, are being leapfrogged into the superior courts and other places. And so we must be prepared as NDC legal persons to also go onto the bench so that we can balance out, the judiciary. Currently, the judiciary is packed with NPP inclined judges because this government has carried out a deliberate policy of putting their people on the bench. And so I encourage some of you to look at careers on the bench so that we can balance out what the current situation is. There must be...
Okay, so if you missed it, there you have it. That's what the ex-president said, and said that the NDC lawyers must get ready to also take the bench. What he described, as I said earlier, as a balance on the bench. And he spoke of reforms. A lot of people have been asking, is this how he hopes to reform? I mean, Gary Nimarko has been saying that this shows that the ex-president lacks understanding of the court system. Is this true? But let's see what let's see what he said last year as well. And let's see why he really is on the judiciary and why it matters most, because he says accountability.
Recently, so badly has the image of our judiciary deteriorated that many of our citizens openly make mockery of our justice system and of our justices. The phrase, "go to court," is these days met with derisive laughter instead of hope that one will truly get justice if he went to the courts. If people are not poking fun about politics and inducements being used to sway the hand of justice in the lower courts, then it is poking fun and making statements about the 7-0 of the unanimous FC. One of the scariest existential threats to any democracy is when citizens think their judiciary holds no value for them or no use to them. And this is the security threat that the national security apparatus tried to draw the attention of the nation to recently, but was poorly received by the president and his party. It is scary because it threatens the peace and stability of our democracy, and we must quickly correct this fast-spreading notion. If care is not taken, we'll get to a stage where people will have no qualms about taking the law into their own hands because they do not have the confidence that they can get any justice from the system. There is therefore the urgent need for the Ghanaian judiciary to work to win the trust and confidence of the citizenry and erase the widely held perception of hostility and political bias in legal proceedings at the highest courts of the land. Unfortunately, we have no hope that the current leadership of our judiciary can lead such a process of change. We can only hope that a new Chief Justice will lead a process to repair the broken image that our judiciary has acquired over the last few years.
Okay, yeah, so you've seen that one as well. So Courage and Anthony, we'll start with what he said about the judiciary. We'll have some time to also talk about the, the tape, the purported tape that's hoping to oust the current IGP and why the NDC is also trying to still maintain the routes that they want for their, their march, the protest march. But let's stick to this one. Just because Courage is openly, for the NPP, I'd like you to take the first foot. Let's go.
No problem with that. So on the issue of the judiciary, the point is that there is one thing we need to look at: the structuring of our judiciary in itself, the appointment of people onto the court. What are the procedures? What are the impacts of that procedure on judicial independence? And having examined that, we will know where the real source of our problem is. Of course, I've listened to President John Dramani Mahama. I'm an ardent supporter of President John Dramani Mahama for his 2024 bid, having seen the riots that is going on in the country. but I have quite some reservations about where he thinks the problem is. I think the problem is an institutional problem. And over the years, our executive arm of government has taken advantage of that institutional problem. And it can only be said that it has been exacerbated under President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who has appointed people who are partisanly colored, as he has said. For avoidance of some issues, I will not go into mentioning names of justices, but we know for a fact that there are justices who are on the bench who are former executives of the MPP. And so that is problematic. Now, what are the appointment procedures? If you look at Article 144 of the Constitution, when it pertains to the Chief Justice, it is on the recommendation of the Council of State in consultation, on the recommendation of the Judicial Council in consultation with the Council of State, and Parliament approves. A similar situation exists for the other justices of the Supreme Court. But if you look at an appointment of High Court, Court of Appeal, regional tribunals, and a lot of people have forgotten what exactly President Mahama said. President Mahama did not say the Supreme Court. Yeah. He said the superior courts. That's what he said, and I paid attention to that in the record. So the emphasis is on the superior courts. What happens in the appointments of members of the superior courts? Aside the Supreme Court, when you come to High Court, it's almost like the president can just wake up, lift and dump, lift and dump, lift and dump. Because we've been told in the GBA and Attorney General case that the recommendations are not binding on the president. And so if you recommend to him,
But the Ghana Bar Association also says that he cannot go outside of the list.
He can't go outside of the list. That is clear. So I'm coming to that as well. The recommendations are not binding on the president, and then he cannot go outside of the list. So what is the problem of the president finding people who are partisanly colored on the list?
Good question.
It means that our Judicial Council is recommending people with partisan colors. And the issue is that it came to us, we should answer the question of morality in Article 1284 of the Constitution as to who has high moral character to be on the court. The same court checked responsibility and said that they will not interpret what morality means, that morality should remain in the domain of the president. Having told us that it should remain in the domain of the president, you proceed and nominate people who are from his party. In a situation where people think you are biased, you nominate people from the president's political party and send to him to appoint to the court. So you see, it is a systemic problem which we need to deal with. The role of the judiciary in ensuring that there is a perception of credibility and trustworthiness for itself is very critical. And the judiciary has not helped the matters. Let's be honest with the facts. The judiciary itself has not helped the matters. From the 2 GBA cases, they did not help the matters, especially when we see that the institutions that are supposed to be some level of checks on the president, the Judicial Council, the Council of State, they are almost non-existent when it comes to these processes. Let's be honest with it. Dr. Atupare had the occasion to comment on this as far back as 2015 in his thesis, Constitutional Justice in Africa. If you go to page 205, you see it over there. He had occasion to say that the Judicial Council and the Council of State are absolutely powerless in the process. What we need to do is to strengthen those institutions. When we say that, Atuguba JSE and Justice, Badebe had the occasion to interpret the provisions that had to do with whether or not the recommendations are binding on the president. And they rightly said that even though they are not binding, he can't go outside the list. And you told us that high moral character is for him to determine, but you end up putting people who are in his party on the list. He's definitely going to appoint people who are from his party. So the recommendations that come from you should, pass a certain test. If they don't pass the test, these are the situations we are going to be having. I am not saying, and I want to sound a caution, that people who are partisanly colored are automatically unqualified to be on the bench. The Constitution doesn't even care about which party colors the person has. The person qualifies whether or not he has partisan colors. But if you are dealing with a highly polarized society, okay, where people associate partisanship with bias and all that, you may want to be cautious about, the criteria you set for yourself and the boxes you tick when you are making these recommendations, especially if you are making these recommendations to a politician whose only consideration is power and the hold on it. So you on the judiciary has a higher responsibility, and it is their failure to hold that responsibility very well that has resulted to this. So President Mahama is indeed reacting to a situation that exists. Let's not pretend the situation does not exist. My challenge, however, is that the president only reacted to the symptom of the larger problem. Even though he said that we must pursue judicial reform, I do not think simply appointing people who are perceived to be NDC is enough to solve the problem. There's a need.
Is it okay an option?
I mean, if you are in his position as leader of party and you have a situation where you feel that your opponent, and you have that apprehension that there are accountability issues, which if anybody who follows President Akufo-Addo's presidency cannot deny that there are accountability issues. There's accountability crisis in this country. The issue of Bank of Ghana, which the NDC minority in parliament wants to demonstrate against, that they are using the police service to obstruct. All those issues are accountability issues which would arise. So if you are under such apprehension that there is a deliberate, feeling of the court with people who are partisanly colored, and you are under the apprehension that the intention is to prevent those accountability checks to be made, of course, you'll be tempted to make such utterances. But I do not necessarily think that the solution to our judicial problem, the crisis we have, and the crisis is a crisis of perception. And this is very important. The judges, hundreds of years, believe that when the public believes that they are not dispensing justice, it's a problem.
It's a problem.
So the perception problem is something that needs to be handled, and we need to deal with it head on. So anyone who denies that President Mahama raised concerns would be lying. My challenge, however, is that the solution must go deeper than merely trying to balance the court in terms of partisan colors. I do not think that. And I want to sound, finally, that nobody should take the perception that being partisan colored automatically is equal to incompetence. It is not.
Okay. Kari, surely we have people in the judiciary of people who are dispensing justice coming from the NDC currently as well. At least if I don't know one or two, I know some judges that or they've openly that have said that the NDC before, they were appointed. So this comments coming from the ex-presidents now and before, do you have any problems with it?
Thank you very much, MFA, and good evening to your listeners. My brother, it's good to meet him again, my young brother. He's been busy in the lecture halls and buried in the libraries, but it's good that we all build capacity. On the substantive issue, this is the perennial John Mahama problem, the credibility crisis of his own self. Taints everything he touches. That is a fact. I was expecting that I'll hear from one who has been president before, from his own previous statement that if you've not been president before, you don't know what it takes, you don't know what matters. To come and tell us that we've realized a problem in this sector of our governance, the judiciary, and this is my proposal for making sure that our judiciary is trusted by the citizens. And to do that, I'll propose Bill A, which will seek to give independence of the executive and any other control to the judiciary, so that we can have a judiciary that all parties and all people can be confident in. But no, the same old John Mahama playing to partisanship and saying that he will only, reinforce the problem that he claims to have identified by doing the very same thing he's criticizing.
But we know that the judiciary is a numbers game. For you to bench and for you to arrive at, some accountability, what the judges would arrive at should be some numbers.
Yes, but there's also what you can do such that irrespective of the numbers, all right, we can have justice and the perception of bias will not be there. For example, President Mills, may he so rest in peace, started a very wonderful process of legal reform, changing the constitution, constitutional review. President Mahama inherited it, abandoned it completely. Could the suggestions or the recommendations in that report have created a better system today for us not to be decrying a supposedly polarized judiciary? That is what I'm talking about. He abandoned it. It was not President Kufuor who initiated it or anything. It was his own former boss, literally his own government, because he was vice president of that government.
But we all know that every time, even people in the same party, when there's secession and all, they don't necessarily continue because they have their own policies and ideologies they like to, implement for a country.
I cannot grant that when you are vice president in that government.
Which means that you were part of
all the decisions and everything. All right? But because he is not committed to the real issues of proper governance and development, unlike his former boss. He paid no attention to it. It just died out. I had confidence that President Kufuor would do it, but he's also not done it. Nobody can convince me today that President Kufuor is committed to that process. He's not demonstrated it. And that is the problem in our politics. We are heavy on politics, very low on development. So the structural arrangements that will ensure that we are having transformation in our society, nobody is interested. None of our leading political figures. I was single out probably Honorable Alan Martin for his consistency in character and credibility.
I mean, he's not had the opportunity to be in a position where all these people we're talking about being. Because remember, John Mahama said that you cannot know until you've been president before. I like to think that you have your own conviction until you have the role in front of you to play.
You know, I like to judge people by their past actions, by their history, what they've done. For me, that is the predictor of all other things being equal, what you will do tomorrow. And on the basis of that, Honorable Alan Martin stands tall. Consistently from 92 till now, unblemished in character, in credibility, in integrity. He's handled, he's been our longest serving trade minister.
I would say same about Bawumia too, before he became vice president. I could dare say this, nearly say this about him before he became president, until he got into the corridors of power. I could say same. He's quite a gentleman. I mean, I don't see what Alan possessed now that before.
No, it's beyond being a gentleman.
Okay.
You can be a gentleman, you'll be Mr. Nice Guy. And I can give that to President Mahama. I mean, he's nice. Okay, if you ask me to even compare, I'll say he's a nicer person than President Kufuor. Okay, in terms of being nice, having that disposition, you know, that embrace that is all welcome and, you know, sociable and all of that.
Anthony, do you agree? Do you agree?
If you ask me,
on any day, I'll rate President Mahama over President Kufuor on any
in terms
consideration.
Of
on any level of measurement.
So I agree with him.
Is that even fair? That's like you working with a prejudice.
It's not, I'm not working with a prejudice. You can put the boxes niceness, and let's take them one by one.
Okay. He's a nicer person. I mean, you give that to him. But you see, unfortunately, the job of leadership, being nice, is not part of the requirements.
Okay.
What is required is the integrity to do what you say you will do. The commitment to do what is right, irrespective of the castigations, even if the whole world will fall, sticking to doing the right. That kind of character is what I find in Honorable Alan Martin. He is unbendable when it comes to corruption. He's unbendable when it comes to greed and all the rods that you think about. And he has demonstrated it in high office such as ministerial position. And for me, that sets him apart.
It will be hard.
You think it's Alan who would do the judicial reform better than
because it's also backed by consistent performance.
Current president has held ministerial positions before. He's been Attorney General before.
In fact, President Kufuor, I'm told when he was in Parliament, people used to think he's a saint. So once he becomes president of Ghana, everything was going to metamorphose into paradise.
So it's hard for me to think that you think.
But at least President Mahama, I have tested, you know, he's been president from 2012 to 2016. He was vice president before. When we put all the metrics down, in terms of even economic development, in terms of accountability, I would rate him over any person in the NPP. The reason being that what has been the issues which arose during President Mahama in terms of members of his cabinet? Some of them ended up in jail. What are the issues that arise under President Kufuor, for example? He tells us issues that are even about to go to court. And these are contributors to the perception that the judiciary is biased. When the issue of the sanitation minister came up about money being under her bed and all that, the president emphatically declared that she will be out of the situation even before the court process began.
He hoped.
No,
he
emphatically declared that.
So you see,
so
when we talk about all these things, President Mahama stands tall. And so if President Mahama today talks about judicial reform, it is not something I am in doubt he intends to pursue. Of course, I have been clear that my point of departure from His Excellency the President is the fact that he must go further than just thinking that if people who are lawyers on the other side end up on the bench, it will change, and he must go further than that. Our Judicial Council must be strengthened. In fact, I agree on the recommendation that the constitutional review should do that.
Of institutional building.
He does have the track record. When President Mahama was president, we can even take it from the media to the judiciary everywhere.
He built the media?
No, at least he was not witch hunting them. Caleb Kuda was not being slapped around.
I think
people
were
not being silenced.
I want my younger brother and I to agree
we must face these realities.
Let's not somersault, right?
We are not somersaulting. We are facing the realities.
No,
you see, I took a few issues I wanted to respond to when you spoke.
But I'm not even done with my submission.
Come on, you've taken so long. But the point I'm saying is this. The point I'm making is this. You said something very emphatic, and I noted it down, that President Mahama has credibility crisis. And you speak for a political party who the records
to be fair, you have noted that. To be fair, Courage, give me one. Just give me one example that we can cite as him being him having credibility crisis.
You know, when it comes to the arduous job of leadership, not politics, and many at times we forget. See, the politics is the process that brings you into leadership. Okay? Having been brought there, what you do that we expect of you is to provide that managerial acumen that is able to make the society thrive, that creates an environment where young people can thrive, where talent can be developed and can thrive. So you can do all the politics, but when you get there, what we expect of you is not continuing the politics.
Okay.
And that is what has been prevalent, particularly in the Fourth Republic. And if you want to go for, I mean, recently, Afarijan, bombastic expose that he's always been NDC. But look at his leadership of the Electoral Commission. It was not colored,
of course.
If you ask me. It was uncolored. His membership of the NDC, all right, which is the politics of faith, probably might have gotten him there by the late Rawlings. But look at how he dispensed himself.
You would say that despite him
being... In fact, it got to a point that we even had the NDC having a problem with him. The same with the late Peter Lajete. As Speaker, he dispensed himself so well that at a point, even the MPP, of which he was former chairman of, had a problem with him. It is that kind of... And to be able to do that, you need to have a certain character. That is what I see in Honorable Alan Martin, that I do not see in John Mahama.
But you see, that's what I'm saying, that you see, to make very emphatic statements like that, you must be willing to back them. That President Mahama
let's go for a break.
Do you want us to go for a break? But I need to land this point.
You have made your point quite fair. He is on the credibility of the ex-president. You have said that when I give you 30 seconds.
So the person he says that I will only package with my people.
He never said that.
That's the proposition he made.
Both of us listened to that audio.
That's all he said.
And we must put the
That's
issues,
the only thing he put on the table.
That's not true.
Balance it with NDC.
We must put the issues into perspective. President Mahama said, most of you are eyeing positions in the executive. I do not think that you should only eye positions in the executive, because we are going to be pursuing judicial reforms. And in pursuit of these judicial reforms, please let me land my point. In pursuit of these judicial reforms, some of you must be ready to go to the bench. And I have made the premise clear that being partisanly colored in itself is not incompetence to be on the bench. And so for President Mahama to say he's pursuing a reform, and for that matter, he's making appointments, people in the NDC must be willing to also go to the bench, he is not saying foul. He is responding to a concern that he has, that people may only be eyeing executive positions, which is fair to have that concern. If you want to pursue judicial reforms, you are going to pursue judicial reform with human beings. And you should be willing to tell your people that they should join you in the pursuit of these reforms. And as I indicated earlier, my only contention with the president's issue is they did not go further to say that our judicial council has issues. We need to deal with all these things. Merely appointing NDC people.
We're going to go for a break. Guys, stay with me. When we come back, we'll pick up on the conversation. So, you know, a lot has been happening. Quite an unending, you know, purported audio tape. You know that it's been developing every day. When we go for this quick breather, when we come back, we'll talk about that this day.
Your favorite evening talk show is back on your screens. Join us as we dive deeper into your issues, spark meaningful conversations, and celebrate the strength and resilience of people everywhere. What do you do to make sure that the upbringing, the morals you're trying to instill in your child is not corrupted by social media?
It's really difficult to handle when it comes to the upbringing of children, when you can't be available all the time for your child.
I think we need to move away from being the stern parents, being the strict parents, to rather building friendships with our children.
Last season was amazing, exciting and educational. Get ready to be thrilled and entertained as we discuss relevant issues and empower each other.
When it comes to marriage, economically, the burden of finance is on the man, not the woman. And it's even accepted legally that the woman's money is her money. She gets to keep it, she gets to spend it.
You get married to someone and then you ask yourself that,
we're here to listen, to inspire, and to amplify.
We have friends that when they tell you that their boyfriend does this, and they say, I'm done, I'm finished, I'll never talk to him again. Tomorrow, they're there chopping love with the same guy.
So don't miss out on The Dish with myself, Oferiua, and some of your favorite personalities as guest hosts, Mondays and Wednesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. right here on MX24 TV.
Visit www.mx24online.com for news, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, up-to-the-minute sports updates, and the latest broken pen stories now. Experience more of MX24 Online. Visit mx24online.com today. MX24. Fun, fearless, and factual.
Hi guys, so welcome back to Opposing Views here on MX24 Television. I'm here with Anthony and Courage, and if you just joined, you haven't missed much, but we're going to pick up on that conversation that's been trending so much. So we were here some months ago, and then a tape that's purported to have been recorded about ousting the IGP came out, and so Parliament decided to set up an ad hoc committee to authenticate that tape. Now, it started off with meeting Chief Bukri Nabu, and later on, other witnesses have been called to be interrogated. It's been quite an interesting development, a cocktail of a lot of confusion, personal venting, people describing it as very huge mutiny in the police service. Now, Courage, I'll have you start with this one. I followed the, interrogation with Chief Bukri Nabu. I've also followed COP Alex Mensah. I've also followed Superintendent George Asari as well. And I do not want to state my position yet. I'm not going to state my position yet, but give me your pre-assessments of it.
Thank you. I think it's a very bizarre development. It's unfortunate for that what happened, but it's also good for the development of our institutions and our politics and our governance. Why do I say so? When it comes to these state institutions, you'd want to have an arrangement where they are devoid of control. They're devoid of control. And you have people who can be trusted to do the right. And that's why I think that Dr. Dan Parry stands tall. The police service under him has seen tremendous improvement. Everybody can attest to that. You can see the improvement even in the push-train, in the confidence of the service. You pass through both physical development and the development of the psyche, the mentality of the personnel. He's done fantastically well. Now, anytime there is a rotten system and anybody decides to pursue change, the establishment will fight back because every rot has its beneficiaries. And I think it is the attempt to fight back the positive development that he's brought that we are seeing here. And for me, it gives me confidence that if you're in a system, you don't have to kowtow. You don't have to go with the flow. That's what IGP Dan Parry teaches me. You don't have to go to the flow. Stick to your ideals. The opportune time will come, and when you are implementing, you are going about it, and even people within and whether decide to sabotage you, you'll have some of the serendipitous development that we are seeing. Nobody was there. But out of that evil conclave, I'll call it, we have it now coming into the entire glare of the public. And they are somersaulting, and I mean, it's crazy. But it's good. Every young person should learn from this. See, what is IGP Dampare's track record? Stick it to integrity. To the extent that, you know, he was the one at the East Legon police when the late J.B. Dankwa was killed.
Yeah.
He was so bent on pursuing the matter to the extent that he had to be transferred. To Winneba, yes. He's had a consistent track record. At some point, he suffered for it, but look at where he is today. And even when all the orchestrations were going on, come on, what crime has he committed other than to do what the police should be doing? That is all he's done. And so you have all these orchestrations and underhand dealings just trying to get him off. And what God has done is to blow their cover. There's nothing you can do against a good man. And for me, that is what this teaches me. And so for us as young people, because see, why is Ghana the way it is? Why do we continue to have galamsey on our hands at the level that we are witnessing today? NDC was there from 2013, it started. NPP, we campaigned vigorously that we are going to do something about it. We've been in power for near 7 years. It is still happening. Why should it be so? Why should, after 7 years of my party's governance, us continue to have galamseys? Because there's nobody prepared to do what Dr. Dampare is doing in the police service. To say that this is right and we must pursue it to the latter. That's it. And so I am happy. All the, who is the other person? Is it Alex Mensah?
Yes.
Disgraceful. He does not merit wearing a uniform.
But
in
people
this
have
service.
said that he's a commissioner of police, and so what he says cannot be thrown under the carpet. Do you agree?
Well, under which carpet? The point is that
because
we want to see...
if you're saying that he does not deserve to be commissioner of police, I like to think that he started from... You don't just become a commissioner of police, right? You start from a very low rank, and then he didn't start under this regime. He may have started long ago. So how was he taken into the police service?
30 years.
I am scared when I hear a policeman saying that a working IGP is a danger for the interest of a political party. And that in elections, there are mafia works. And so if we keep him there, we will not be able to have the mafia works done. Is it the job of the police to facilitate mafia or to stop it?
Perfect. We have that on audio. I didn't show my viewers that audio. So let's listen. I'll come back to you, Anthony, in a moment.
I wish I beat the big matter. But this current IGP, if we make a mistake and take him to elections, we take him to the elections to not help us. To not help us at all. And I will not even mind if the position is not given to me, but that man is changed. Because he will not help us. He will not help us at all. At all. He will help the country. He will not help some people who rest. He will help the country at all. I know there are others who are also looking for this position. If I don't get in this man is change, and those people that we think they are our men, yes, like it, I will not be, I will say that. Because we need to break this 8. That is the most one. We need to break the 8. We need to break the 8. That's true. Because I wouldn't want Doctor to come back and then lose the elections. That's what happened. Everybody was taxed. Until they came back. But hey, no, give me the position, give me the age. What this IGP is looking.
So I think I now understand why they had to set up a whole committee to authenticate this tape, because I even am struggling to hear what was recorded. But I stopped you before to go on.
It's unthinkable, you know.
Will this be an admittance of election fixing?
No, well, admittance of should I say, conspiracy to influence or subvert the sovereign will of the people. You know, that is what it is. And I'm glad he never became IGP. Yes, that was his objective. He was actually seeking to undermine IGP Dampare so that he will be appointed, so that he will help with mafia works in elections. No, that would have been disastrous for this nation.
Let me stay with you a minute before I go to Anthony. Sure. Do you think that the IGP definitely should be investigated some sort, by all means?
Oh, if there is
should he be given the opportunity to explain himself? Should he go through
what does he have to explain? Yeah. It's just baseless allegations being thrown by someone who is position hungry.
We have said that is baseless. Don't forget that some of them have said they're going to testify a few other things in camera. So we are only working with what we can watch and hear.
But they didn't even say that the IGP has been working to undermine the election to favor somebody.
No.
In his own words, he said the IGP is preventing them from doing something to favor the New Patriotic Party. So what should be probed? That he himself, the person who is undermining the integrity of the IGP, admits that the IGP wants the elections to be fair. What should we probe again?
But in also, they've been speaking that they are purporting that the recording was orchestrated by the IGP.
Orchestrated by the IGP, and the IGP plays the words in his mouth?
No. I wouldn't know.
No, so if I orchestrate that you should be recorded, because, I mean, that's even admitting without granting that the IGP orchestrated it, that you should be recorded. Because I have suspicion of the fact that you're going about undermining my work, a work which I am doing in all honesty. And then you indeed go and vindicate why I should be recording you. Why should there be any problem with that?
Why are we recording?
So no, but
why is there recording?
When he was asked in Parliament if he indeed said those things, he said them, and later was making claims that they were doctored.
Yeah.
The meeting was not orchestrated by the IGP. You went into that meeting yourself. You admitted that you spoke about the IGP.
They said that Chief Abu invited them. It's not that they willingly went.
So, Chief invited you to have a conversation about you subverting elections?
No, it started from who they think should replace the IGP.
So wherever the invitation comes from is immaterial to the fact that this guy has made confessions about election tampering, has made confession about undermining our democracy. He should be in jail.
And so for everything that we've heard in this committee hearing,
yes,
we should just focus mainly on the fact that they were planning to subvert.
Of course, because if you were saying that IGP Dampare is not a serious person, those are the things he was saying at the committee level. Everybody in the police service knows that this IGP is the worst IGP in the history of Ghana.
Is it something to look at?
He has
those ones, I don't have a problem.
Those things.
Is it something to look at?
Those are his personal views, and of course, everybody is allowed to express them. The question which arises
doesn't it matter who is speaking? Just like the ex-president.
I'm coming to that. Okay. It does matter who is speaking. Who is speaking in this case? A person who is conspiring to undermine elections. A person who believes that elections are about mafia works. A person who admits that indeed there is an NDC MPP in the police service which should be cleared, but feels that it should be perpetuated because he is saying that he should have been nominated, not a perceived NDC IGP. That is the person who is speaking. So MFI, if you are telling me that the person who is speaking should be concerned about, this is the person, not the fact that he's Commissioner of Police. Commissioner of Police is attacked. His personality is the things he's speaking out himself. Someone who wants to subvert elections. Someone who thinks NDC MPP should be perpetuated in the election, and for that matter, IGP Dampare does not deserve appointments, and he does. Someone who is publicly admitting that the New Patriotic Party would have subverted the election in Asin North, but for IGP Dampare, which means that the issues which have arisen in this country over the period about the government using the state's apparatus against the citizens are true, and he has admitted them publicly.
The government,
he has admitted almost every single thing about wrongdoing, except to admit that he indeed is the person in the audio who said that
he is the person, but everything he said is not what is on the tape.
How do you tell me this story?
But you see, that is a challenge with duplicitous characters. You know, people who are full of duplicity, who have no principles. That's a problem. And he demonstrates it. I'm glad this is in the full glare of the public. You know, if it were private, you probably have him end up rising further. And I just saw a publication to the effect that he's actually been on retirement since 2019, but only waiting and hoping
he would become IGP.
to become IGP. normally when that
happens,
happens,
the committee that I know that apparently you can be an IGP on contract. Is this true?
Yes, on contract. We saw that with a number of the past. And mostly when I think the current IGP's appointment in recent time would be the one that was most unpolitical or partisan.
Why?
Because in the past, what you have is that they wait for those who've retired, then they make you an acting IGP on contract. And normally it is yearly per approval or per extension. And that puts you at the behest of the appointing authority. So they are quick to do things that will keep them there. And so this month,
because if you don't, they will curtail that.
Yes, I mean, your time is it's a favor they are doing you, you know, to keep you there. So you can't speak, you can't do what they don't want you to do, and you do what they want you to do. So in case where it is mafia works, then they say to turn a blind eye. For example, Asin North, the IGP said if they make it a local election, he will leave local police to deal with it. If they make it a regional election, he will make it a regional, and they've made it national. So he went there with a full force. In fact, almost every regional commander, the full force was there. And that's why we saw the sanity that prevailed. And that is what we want to see. These are the kind of people we want to see in our public institutions. Assuming, I mean, he was appointed by this president. So, all the people that President Mahama is crying about, all right?
At least the government is appointed.
If we would have them behave like the IGP is behaving, we will not have an issue. My challenge, and sorry to go back on to that issue, my challenge is that if I send a matter to court and I do poor legal representation, I cannot blame the court.
Well, that's the way our system is.
I can't blame the court. But if I
is our system inquisitorial or adversarial?
It's adversarial.
And especially when you have a case like the electing petition of 2020, and now the chairman of the party comes and says that after whatever we took to court was a fluke, we didn't have any evidence, we didn't have any issue, and you have the same functionaries now bastardize the court for being unanimous FC.
How did you guys arrive at the
then there's some unfairness here, because if you don't take substantive matter to court with evidence, all the justices would that one direction.
Which you know
come and call them names.
Well, Anthony, as I said,
let's stay in the court because
yes, I was going to respond to that, and the issue of what do you call it, the IGP issue. I wanted to finish my point, but as I said, on the issue of the court, I was clear on the points that a person being appointed by somebody or having a partisan background and all those things is not necessarily coterminous with the person
being immune by the Constitution.
Incompetent. But the point we are making is that we have several considerations to make in making this choice. The considerations include integrity. Integrity of a person is not always a subject matter of the person alone. It's a subject matter of what others even perceive. And so, let me
can perceive something about you that will not be the case. For example, Alex Mensah says that IGP is the worst IGP that there is. But is that the case?
Of course.
It was Afrobarometer that did a perception index and brought this out.
If Afrobarometer brings it out that the present IGP is corrupt, right?
Perception index.
Perception index. I will not have a problem.
Good. So let me
my issue will be that to the extent that the perception cannot be backed. For example, you can have a view of me, right? To the extent that my character is not consistent with the view you hold, I shouldn't be worried.
Okay.
Of course. And the point I'm making is that the delivery of justice is not as simple as you were saying, especially when political cases...
So why has the NDC invested in bastardizing the court?
The NDC has not. What evidence do you have to that effect?
Going to court
what investment
without a substantive case. And I'm quoting the chairman of the party. He says they went to court on election petition. They did not have the evidence. When even the lawyer who represented them, he said when they showed it to me, he was like, "Is this what you are taking to court?"
Which one of the election petitions?
2020. This one. Listen. No, chairman is on record to have said it. So I am quoting the chairman's admittance. So my question is, when they ask their supporters to go and amass themselves at the EC, when they ask them to come to court with them every day, to come and amass and occupy the courts and everything, they knew that they did not have a case. They knew that what they were taking to court was not substantive. And yet they deceived their members to if on the basis of falsehood, you attack the judiciary, people should take you seriously.
People should take us seriously.
Why?
Listen.
Why? When on the basis of you admitting that I don't have evidence, I'm just going on an expedition, and then I mislead my followers.
There are issues.
I think we need to, we as political functionaries,
I'll give you a time.
We as political functionaries should be fair to the state institutions.
I think your point is quite clear.
The
chairman admitted to this. He's here. He should clear.
The issue about 2020 election and the claim that the chairman of the NDC said that the NDC didn't have a case in court, I find it hard to accept because there were issues in the court which
you know better than the chairman.
Please,
courage to be fair.
Please. You can't do this.
Time.
Yes, please. I've allowed that enough. So, to be fair, that to say that the chairman said the NDC had no case in court would be flawed. The NDC pursued several issues in court. You can't pick one out and make a point out of it. The NDC wanted accountability from Chairperson Jean Mensah in court, which we pursued vigorously in court. They wanted Jean Mensah to appear and respond to the issues that the NDC had in that election, which she was not willing to avail herself to. So if we ask our people to turn up in court in support of that particular issue, you can't show up and say that the NDC went to court without anything. But
is that the culture of courts? If you show up in court because you know how you appear in court, you give the issues after you have given the facts.
Of course, the NDC had
you may have 10 issues and maybe 2 out of the issues may go your way.
Of course, and the NDC, what were the people coming? Why shouldn't I ask my people to support my pursuits in court?
Okay.
What is wrong with that?
Makes sense. Nothing else.
What is wrong with that? So you see, the issue about NDC and election petition 2020 alone is not even the only issue that faces the judiciary in Ghana. There are several issues. And the reform issues which President Mahama spoke about, he knows very well it's not only an issue of the Supreme Court. And I put that on record, that to pretend that the Supreme Court of Ghana is the only place we have problem is bad. And if you look at our judiciary and its structure, the weaker link is not even the Supreme Court.
Actually.
The weaker link is the Court of Appeal and the High Court and how the appointment happens over there. And we should be concerned about that. Look at Article 144.3 and see what I'm talking about. The president can literally handpick people and dump over there at any time.
No, but
that is the situation we have over there. You read Article 144.3 and pay attention to the effect of it. Pay attention to the effect of the rulings in GB and Attorney General on Article 144.3. These are issues that we need to address. And if the president speaks about addressing the judicial problem, you cannot reduce it to even election 2020. It is not the only crisis facing us. So we should face the reality of our judiciary, the weaknesses that is faced. We should face the reality that the judiciary is not perceived as independent today. And that perception has been further exacerbated by the fact that President Akufo-Addo, in the presence of these notions that the judiciary is not independent, goes on to appoint party executives to the court. We should face that reality that in the face of these public perceptions, the Judicial Council recommends people who are former executives of a political party to be appointed. These are the realities we should be facing. And let us not pretend that in view of all these concerns, if President Mahama should come out and say that members of the NDC who are lawyers should also be willing to go to the bench. And of course, I'm not going to ignore the fact that he deliberately puts the issue completely out of context. He deliberately ignored the fact that the president was saying that in pursuit of the judicial reforms, the NDC lawyers should not come seeking appointments to the executive, but they should be willing to go to the bench as well. He didn't say that I am going to appoint all of you to the court. He said that all of you should not come pursuing executive positions, that some of you should be willing to go to the court, which I do not really see why he wants to take it out of context.
You're giving us a pool of challenges for the reforms, and yet you give us one out of the meaning how you do it.
No,
that's
what as I said, we have a systemic problem. Senior Courage, please, you wouldn't. Again, I ignored you the first time.
Guys, we have just a minute left.
I ignored you the first time. I'm not going to do it again. So let me make my point.
But we have just 1 minute.
Yes, let me make my point.
Or do you want to use the 1 minute to talk about it?
I want to just land the point in 30 seconds. I am saying that President Mahama has pointed to an issue which exists, and he should admit that one. And two, that the balance of the court as it stands, which he raised, I am saying is just a symptom of the larger problem. We should deal with the larger problem, which I have proposed the solutions to. The Judicial Council should be reformed, the kind of recommendations they make, their matter, and all that. He should face those realities and not pretend that President Mahama is coming to appoint NDC people to flood the place. If the issue about President Mahama saying he's appointing NDC people to flood the place is a problem for him, then he should be willing to call out President Akufo-Addo. He should do that here now. He should call out President Akufo-Addo for making those appointments which he did, which are partisanly colored, which is not in itself a problem. But, you know, matched with the current situation where the public believes you are biased, is problematic. So you must look at all those things if you want the system to be independent, if you want trustworthiness of the judiciary. All these things must be considered in making the appointments. And President Mahama calling that out is no wrong.
Courage. Let me give you the last word.
I think what I expect in public service, whether it is state institutions or the partisan type, is that we are honest, we are consistent, and so you don't criticize one thing today, and then tomorrow when the tables shift, you hold a different position. And that is the extent to which I cannot trust President John Mahama. If I tell you that MX24 has credibility crisis, and that is simply because I come here and I misrepresent issues and you call me out. I don't think that is justified. And on any day, we should be able to admit that indeed I misrepresented facts and I was called out. That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So to the extent that President Mahama can go about and bastardize the courts on the basis of an election which he lost. That's not the basis on which the much later his chairman
called out the court.
Comes out to say that
your president has consistently appointed party apparatchiks to the court. That is the basis, but not 2020 election. Please, you need to call that out. That the basis is that your president has consistently appointed party apparatchiks, not election 2020. So you will be deceiving the public. For a person who says that President Mahama lacks credibility, you should be credible with your analysis. He never, at any point, said it was on basis of election 2020.
President Akufo-Addo has packed the court with party people, and you are criticizing it today. The least I wanted to hear from you is to say that you come and do the same thing. And that is the extent to which I say that he has...
We can even agree on that point, but for you to pretend it's about election 2020...
But that's where it's coming from. It's not out of a vacuum.
He said accountability. He said accountability. He said accountability. Like money is being under the beds of your appointees.
Which appointees?
Like money is being under the beds of your appointees.
Which appointees?
Like a Japan deal and all the things you people were doing. Like Galamsey and clearing agent things. They are all issues with accountability, which President Akufo-Addo perceived. Especially, guys, listen, before the special prosecutor went to court, your president already cleared. That is accountability.
Thank you.
That is accountability.
Courage. No, thank you. Anthony, thank you. Are you going for the march on the 12th? Are you going for the march? Are you marching as or you're not?
No, I wouldn't be marching.
Courage, thank you so much. Anthony,
it's always
thank
a pleasure.
Thank you. Guys,
I wish I had the occasion to talk about the police and their behavior with this thing, but we are allowed,
Yeah.
Visit www.mx24online.com for news, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, up-to-the-minute sports updates, and the latest broken pen stories now. Experience more of MX24 Online. Visit mx24online.com today. MX24. Fun, fearless, and factual.
Sweet, but your love is sweeter. My hair, you day for my hair. I know fit to reset.
The gossip, maybe I was born faithful until the first female suddenly broke a vow.
I feel like you can be my baby.
What
if I broke, now my business. I'll show you go buy to.
And you know, I hire a permanent fan. Yeah, free cocoa, bingo, yeah, bad things go from a side.
No hands, still I can't believe. You know what I mean? I was young, what you expect from me? It is what it is.